A literature review by the American Psychological Association, or the APA, concluded a consistent correlation between violent video game use and an increase in aggressive behavior, as well as a decrease in social behavior and empathy. But everybody already knows video games are bad for society, don't they? This is an example of one of the various views on this statement. However, with a bit of media knowledge, you can discern the true findings from the myths. Today I will discuss this statement and specifically whether video games have an increase in violence in society. Following the APA's release of the review, more than 230 highly regarded academics took issue with these findings. In an open letter to the APA, which you can also find on the Media Coalition site, the group noted the research to be misleading and, I quote, outlined several strong conclusions on the basis of inconsistent or weak evidence. This can be seen through very small correlation of evidence, and as Watson notes in week 2, correlation doesn't always equal causation, particularly on a small scale. The researchers also noted that the association attempted to produce positive findings and seemed to lack negative findings that didn't so much agree with what the paper was saying. And as Watson notes, they are choosing their information and target very selectively. Not to mention the paper does not support the current existing evidence. Society is less violent than ever, and during the video games era has plummeted to a 40-year low in the US and surrounds. Not risen as you would expect if the APA's paper were accurate. Although the academics are not denying their view, they are suggesting that it is not equipped with enough evidence to make such statements. The paper concludes with an easy answer to quite a complex problem, once again suggesting that maybe not enough evidence was presented to give a big picture answer. In the International Journal of Liability and Scientific Inquiry, Patrick Kierkegaard suggests that there is limited evidence to say that video games lead to real-world aggression. Kierkegaard studied a range of papers, several of which concluded that video games can lead to violent behavior in both adults and children, as well as evidence from brain scans carried out whilst people played video games that did show some connection between playing games and an activation of the region in the brain associated with aggression. However, he does note that there is no obvious link between real-world aggression and video games, once again noting that violence has been on a decline and saying, and I quote, "With millions of sales of violent video games, the world should be seeing an epidemic of violence, but it simply is not." So is this all just a moral panic? Good and Ben Yehuda in Moral Panics, The Social Construction of Deviance, state that a moral panic is based off a sense of heightened emotional fear as a reaction to a group engaging in a form of unacceptable or immoral behavior. The behavior in this case is violence, which is then portrayed as an enemy of society. During a moral panic, a group in society would then find it necessary to take action. In this case, the societal group find comfort in placing blame on video games, whether there be proof to believe this notion or not. Good and Ben Yehuda also note that a common reaction in a moral panic is to strengthen rules and laws. Interestingly, in an example provided by Watson in week 4, this came into play when a judge in Chicago was prosecuting a teen who had threatened to undertake a school shooting on a social media video. In the background, he was also playing a violent video game. The judge, along with home detention, told the boy to stop playing violent video games, yet encouraged him to play games such as Mario Kart. However, if we are going off the same moral panic notion, it could be thought that the teen will now go and drive a car recklessly and risk the lives of many. So can we assume that video games are bad for society? At this stage, the research available does not allow me to formulate an opinion either way. However, the majority of academics cannot definitively establish a correlation between video games and violence, and therefore cannot prove the statement, video games are bad for society.